Hey everybody, I am so sorry it's taken so long to do any videos lately. It's been almost 2 years since I produced my last video about any video equipment. A lot of reasons for that, chiefly being among them is that I've moved. I've moved from Northern Illinois 2 years ago to Salt Lake City, Utah area, chiefly because of employment. Much better job market out here than in Northern Illinois. Plus, my opportunities to pursue my personal documentary business are 10 times better out here than they were out there. So I've actually been really busy. The other reason why I haven't produced a lot of videos since then is because I kind of ran out of things to talk about. I've already built all the equipment that I use on a regular basis for my documentary business, so I didn't really have any problems to solve or solutions to come up with. But relatively happy with the equipment that I've made. With the exception of one piece of equipment that, if you've followed my videos at all, you know that I've struggled with, and that is a decent jib crane. My very first piece of video equipment that I ever made was a jib crane. It wasn't my first video I posted, but it was my first piece of equipment, and it was great. I loved making it. It was a fun thing to try out, and it was fun to use for the limited things that I used it for, but it was not very practical. It wasn't portable, and it was not. It was just huge and heavy and wasn't fun. So I redesigned it with this video, as you've seen, and while it was a great idea, it had a lot of flaws because of that tilting thing. So then I improved it with this video with different materials, made it a little more stable, but it still had some flaws. It took about 10 minutes to set up properly. Everything fit into a cloth shotgun case, which was okay, but it's not as easy to carry around those when all the weight is on the bottom. And people would still give me really dirty looks like, oh, does he have a shotgun in there? And so I had to be very I had to plan out my shots and plan and kind of schedule that type of thing, because it couldn't be something that I just spontaneously could whip out and set up and get the shot that I wanted to. Not to mention, I have a very limited use for that in my documentary business anyway. Whenever I would use that would be during a reenactment scene, or perhaps shooting a school or a church or a place of business. Just giving some sort of, instead of just using a sliding shot, I could use that as to kind of just establish a little bit of different dimension of movement. And I also discovered that I don't need something that big. I don't need something that big to really get that across. It's sort of like what I discovered when after I made my track dolly. I didn't need that much motion to really establish that dimensional difference in motion. That 3-foot track of glider or slider is way effective at doing that, and it's much better. It's much more portable. So I still kind of struggle with the whole notion of using a jib crane, and it kind of bugged me until I saw this video. This is a video made by Bredahl, and he is demonstrating what he calls his roto rig, and it basically is his adaptation of a travel jib, a mini jib, and then he turns it on its side and makes it into a shoulder rig. And then when I saw that, I was like, that is absolutely brilliant. What an amazing idea. And I totally inspired me to come up with or to actually build it. So I was getting ready to order all of the parts that he used to make it, but then as I came across some struggles trying to find the exact parts, it occurred to me that maybe I didn't really want to make an exact duplicate of what he made. Maybe I wanted to have something a little more simplistic, but still would achieve the same results. And so rather than going out and buying all that stuff, I thought, well, what do I have around the house? This is me being the cheapskate that I am. What do I have around the house that I could use as materials to make this without spending a ton of money, but also making it kind of my own thing for my own specific needs. I have always had to keep that in mind. And so I came up with something else, and I used, oddly enough, a tripod. I seem to like to use those as the basis of a lot of things. Now, I'm out here in Illinois, or out here in Utah, and I had to leave a lot of my stuff out in Illinois in storage because I didn't have a lot of space when I first moved out here. But one thing I did have was my dad had an old tripod actually made by Sears. And this is probably made back in the late 70s, early 80s. And let me tell you, this is just the center post of it, but this thing was built like a tank. It is super, super solid. And really well made, and it was much more of a sturdy feeling, solid feeling piece of equipment, so I thought I would use that as the basis. And I will show that to you now, how I made it, and you'll see my adaptation of what Chad Bredahl did, and I'm much more happy with it than I actually thought I would be. This is my variation on the travel jib and shoulder mount idea inspired by Chad Bredahl. As you can tell from this design, I've used a tripod. The 3 legs are basically used, the 2 of them are for the upper and lower arm. And the 3rd leg I actually mounted to the top arm here, but I twisted it around so that it extended out the other way. So because I have this weight attached, and I can extend it and use it as a counterweight. Works really well, and I'm actually very, very pleased with this tripod because it is, like I said, it's built like a tank. It's really nice. I'll talk a little bit about this weight. This actually came from a Merlin style Steadicam that I bought, but I broke, so I wasn't going to use it anymore, so I kind of dismantled it, and I thought, hey, I can use this weight for that. So I cut it right here, and then I attached it by drilling a hole through the tripod leg and the arm of this weight that was attached to at the same time, so it goes through both. Then I capped it off with a nylock nut so that it stays and won't come off, and it works actually pretty well. I actually, in order to make this truly balanced, I have to add a little bit of an ankle weight here on the end, but other than that, it's a nice and easy and compact way of having a weight versus carrying around one of those big round, ones that you normally would do. So let's talk a little bit about this. Where I got this shoulder pad from was from a really kind of a cheap shoulder mount that you can buy that I needed to buy in a pinch, and I really didn't like it. I have a very heavy rig, and what this does is it stabilizes it by basically you're pulling the rig into your shoulder. It does stabilize it, but you're basically doubling your fatigue factor, because not only are you're using a lot of energy pulling it toward your shoulder to stabilize, but you're also lifting up your heavy rig. And so it doesn't use any counterweights, it's just pressing up against your shoulder. So I didn't like it very well. I ended up using the rods and the support system and the sunshade, and also now I'm using this shoulder pad for this. And it actually worked out pretty nicely because I wasn't sure how I was going to be able to use it, but it already has a built-in Velcro strap that fits around these 2 legs here, but also I secured it even further with an additional piece of Velcro. It's kind of cool. Very happy with it. It actually makes it very comfortable to use as a shoulder mount. Okay, for the sides here, I used flat aluminum bar, and I rounded off the top here, but I drilled holes to go through the arms of the jib, and then I for all except for one of the connections here for the sides going through the arms, I used a 1/4 inch 20 bolts, but then I capped it off with a nylock nut. And what I did is I tightened it all the way down to the point where it hardly moved, but then I loosened it back up a little bit to the point where it was a little bit more free, and then it's perfectly smooth now. This right here is a little pin that I made out of, actually this is the fine adjustment screw that's on the Merlin Steadicam that I broke apart. So, but I use that to keep the jib from going down. If I can get this off here. So now it can go down, and it kind of locks it in place. And we'll talk a little bit more about what went on to making this. Okay, one thing I do want to bring to your attention is that how I space this out is I have the bolt going through the aluminum, and I have a nylon spacer with a nylon washer, nylon spacer coming out, and then I have it kept off with a nylock. This is a lot better than what I used before. What I used before was basically metal spacer with metal washers, and metal on metal is never good unless you're going to lubricate. The cool thing about nylon is it's self-lubricating and it works really well. And like I said before, I tightened it down to the point where it could barely move, but then I backed off a little bit so that now it's really smooth. And I did this on both ends of the jib. How this mounts to the tripod is kind of interesting. I have my quick release plate that I actually used with my previous jib crane. I have 4 bolts that are going through the bottom of the quick release plate, through this plastic piece I'm kind of using as a spacer, into these brackets. There's 2 brackets on each side. There's one and a second one over here. And the bolts come in through these holes here. I then secured them with nylock nuts to keep it down. And the same thing with over here with the other side. I have the aluminum bar mounting to the brackets with similar bolts and nylock nuts. And it's very strong, it's very sturdy. I'm sure there's a lot better way for this to be, you know, made, but this is what I came up with. The cool thing about this plastic is that it's actually manufactured by a friend of mine, and it's basically taken milk jugs and melting them in your oven until they become this liquid consistency, and then when you let it cool, it hardens into this very, very nice. It's very lightweight, but it's extremely hard material that you can work like it's wood. You can cut it, you can shape it, you can sand it. It's amazing. It's really nice, and it's much lighter than wood of that same hardness. So I use that to kind of keep everything nice and stiff and solid. Okay, let's talk a little about this end. This is kind of what makes it happen where it can be a jib crane or a shoulder mount. First I want to talk about why I use this kind of camera on this end. First of all, it's extremely lightweight, and this is the jib crane version of this, so it's very lightweight. And for me, I'm not speaking for anybody else, but for myself, 95% of the time when I'm using this for a jib, I'm going to be doing wide open vistas, and I don't need to really have a lot of selective focus involved. I'm showing off someone walking underneath this as they're walking away from the frame, or I'm you know, establishing some sort of a shot, but it's not really meant for up close personal type of applications. At least for me, it doesn't. I use it for a very limited, very particular type of thing. So this isn't really maybe great for everything, but if I were to put my DSLR, it still would work just fine as a jib crane. But I find that not being able to adjust the focus from over there, and when my DSLR is up here, it's not working too well. I have the same thing as the back. I have aluminum bar as this makes up the sides of this, and again I have the quarter 20 bolts going through, and I have nylon spacers, nylon washers, nylon washer, nylon spacer to kind of keep things together. And I also use this up here. As you can see, right here, I mounted 2 screws, actually on both sides, to this plastic piece to mount the side pieces to that, so that it has a place of where it meets. And so those 2 screws go in there and they kind of keep it together. But I also have support brackets underneath, and as you can see, there's some support brackets there. It works pretty well. As far as this goes, these are quick release plates that I actually got from an older tripod set that I had right here. These are my old development ones, and they turned out not to work very good anymore. In fact, they kind of disintegrated on me on the bottom there. But I took off the top and I cut it in to make it so that it would fit and didn't have the part that this part goes through anymore, and so I could use them as quick release plate receivers. Okay, we're now looking at this as though we were underneath it, and it's kind of on its side to be used as a shoulder mount. We're looking at it from kind of the bottom there. And this is here is as far as design goes, this is where Chad Bredahl and I kind of part ways, because his handles are actually built in as a part of his jib crane. Whether he has it on his side or whether he has it as a jib crane, the handles are always there. And I didn't want that. I didn't want there to be any weight on this side or any weight on this side that could cause any interference with this being used as a jib crane. I didn't want there to be any kind of tilting involved in that. So what would happen if I had a lot of weight on this side? It would actually cause it to twist a little bit and cause some tilting. And tilting is exactly what I wanted to get away from my last two iterations of jib crane. But I still needed to have handles, one here, one here. But if I do this, if I only have my handles here, it's not very wide and it can cause some instability. So I needed to be able to make my handles out to here, but if I had a permanent length of piece here, it would get in the way of being able to use this for cameras to attach. So I needed something that was going to be retractable. So I came up with this piece of aluminum that I drilled holes in, and I cut a slot in that was going to would allow it to be able to be used like this, where I can raise it or extend it out, tighten it down, and then it stays in place. So now the width of my span is like this, and it's not so bad. Now this bolt right here is in place to keep this so that you have 2 points of contact versus one. If I only had 1 point of contact for this bar could just spin around, and no matter how tightened it could still move. But with two points of contact, it can't. It can only go that far, and that's as far as it will move. And the reason why it moves that much is because I did a bad job with my cutting of my slot. So now what do I use for my handles? Again, I wanted to use something extremely lightweight that even if I left them in, would not hinder this ability to be used as a jib crane. So I'm using these. Those are the little mini tripods that you can buy. You attach your camera to this 1/4-20 thread, and then you can adjust it as pivoting. It's really nice. This one, I actually had the leg for it downstairs, but it broke off. The little pin that holds it in broke off. So anyway, but it still doesn't stop it from being able to be used as a handle. So what you do is you just put it into this. And by the way, this right here is a coupler that you can get from the hardware store. It's open and ended on both ends, so you can put anything that's 1/4-20 threaded in there, and on both sides. So I decided to use this protruding piece of bolt that came through and attach it to there. And attach this one to that, so that I can attach a handle using, I didn't have to add any more bolts or any more holes to make this work out. Now for the top one, I use the same kind of thing except for this one's black. But again, it's super lightweight. They're made out of aluminum and plastic, and so they work really well. So that's on there. Now I can use these as handles, and they work really well. But even if I leave these in and I want to switch to becoming a jib crane again, real quick, I can put this down, tighten it down. Even if I have it and I leave these like that, there's hardly any weight at all to them. This is not going to twist them or add any more tilting because there's no weight. And even if there is a little weight, I can adjust these so they hang down. Or to the side or whatever. Okay. It does not interfere with it at all. It does not add any weight to the side, nothing. Okay, so here we are with the shoulder mount now. It's the same thing. I've got my nice camera rig up there, so now you notice that with the shoulder mount, or the shoulder thing, I can actually slide it back and forth, so it makes it a little easier. Also kind of cool is I can, with it being loose, I can have nice pans just standing still. With the pin in, it doesn't move. This right here is where I had the sliding out piece of aluminum, so I can attach this handle, which is actually just one of those little tripods. I have another one, but it's being used for something else right now, but it attaches there. And this is a nice thing. It's counterbalanced with the weight, so it's nice. And it works out really well. My hat's off to Chad Bredahl for coming up with this idea of using for a shoulder mount and a travel jib. Tell me what you think about this. Thanks for watching.